Hello, world, and welcome to Learning to Loop, the Computer Science Education Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the 0th iteration. With Learning to Loop, we are absolutely thrilled to begin a strong and structured conversation about the state of computer science education around the world. This season will focus on computer science education at Stanford University. We are really excited to start this conversation with you all. In a world where computing is such a pervasive force, the need for quality computer science education grows. A major teacher shortage plagues computing in all stages of education. Computational concepts are very hard to teach. Educational costs are rising. And yet these issues represent only the tip of the iceberg of problems we must address to train ourselves for a better future. Despite these challenges, computing remains a field of high creativity, intense demand, and immense potential. And people are learning how to program and teaching how to program, or even learning how to think like a programmer in so many different ways, now more than ever. Let me give you a little primer on who I am and why I started this project. I'm your host, Nathan, and I'm a recent computer science graduate from Stanford University. During my time before and after Stanford, and going forward, I've always enjoyed concepts in teaching and learning, and I've been fascinated by how we can teach computing more effectively worldwide. I'm starting Learning to Loop because I want to know how we will meet the demand of computing and intelligence, and how we will train the best computer scientists. I am excited to learn about computing education right now, and I'm excited to take you on this journey with me. I've had the privilege of learning about computing education from many different sources. In fact, my very introduction to computer science began with the educational programming language Terrapin Logo, controlling a robotic turtle to draw lines and curves on a canvas. I've had a strong and guided introduction to algorithmic thinking since high school, and I had opportunities to work on projects in developing fields like computational biology. I took AP Computer Science A, and I was fortunate to be a teaching assistant for it as well. I felt blessed to have a huge amount of experience programming before I even got to college. While even today, in 2019, Code.org's State of Computer Science Education report indicates that only 45% of schools teach computer science at all. That's not to say that there hasn't been progress. When I graduated high school in 2015, under 60% of students had a usable internet connection within their school. But today in the United States, the connectivity gap is almost completely closed, hovering over 99%, thanks to organizations like Education Superhighway. The rate of female students and minorities taking the AP Computer Science exam has almost doubled in the past 5 years. Every day, we're getting closer, just a little closer, to universal access to a quality computing education, although we have so much more to do. At Stanford, I got to complete my master's degree in artificial intelligence, and I also pursued a minor in education. I was an undergraduate section leader, and I taught introductory courses for 3 years, helping implement better educational practices in the teaching assistant community. I feel lucky that I got personal attention when learning the fundamentals of computing, and I got to give that back to students, which not many get to experience. I got to participate in research in a variety of topics like predicting dropout among high school students, automatically correcting grammar, analyzing international classroom behavior, and tracing knowledge computationally. Most recently, I had the opportunity this summer to help bring some of Stanford's introductory computer science curriculum in the Spanish medium of Bogota, Colombia, for a 2-week crash course through CS Bridge, a nonprofit that will feature later this season. It didn't even occur to me how English-centric learning programming is. And when I think about access to computing education, I see the language barrier holding back a large group of extremely talented young thinkers from pursuing computing. I've taken these motivations to work at Duolingo, where I currently help provide access to quality language education. I've gained a strong appreciation for just how challenging teaching and learning computer science can be, and I continue to be excited for what's to come. But I do know that the opportunities given to me are not given to everyone. All this is to say that I know how much access I have had to computing education, and I want everyone else in the world to have the same opportunities. Through this podcast, I hope to engage all of us loopers in meaningful conversation on how people are unraveling these barriers and working to bring a quality access to computing education for everyone, everywhere. Here on Learning to Loop, we'll try to host the brightest minds in the thick of this conversation. Teachers and students at all levels will share here the promises and pitfalls of computing education. Leaders from nonprofits, researchers, publishers, startups, and government initiatives are putting their investment into computer science education. And we aim to include these voices in Learning to Loop. Around the world, we'll investigate how educational institutions, non-traditional boot camps, and even self-learning through online forums are just some examples of creating so many pathways to learning computing. This season is the humble beginning of a larger conversation around CS education. We'll be talking this season about how Stanford thinks about the teaching of computer science, ranging from teaching practice, research, department structure, and other efforts. This season, you should expect to hear from a variety of voices, like student leaders, skilled teachers, renowned researchers, department chairs, nonprofit founders, and much more. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by such passionate people at Stanford who really care about educational quality and access, and I want to start this discussion of computing education by hosting my incredible mentors, friends, and colleagues at Stanford. We'll be releasing episodes of the podcast fairly regularly for the first few episodes, what I'm calling the first season, and it's coming very soon, so hang tight. Together with my co-creator Karan, for the very first time, thank you for tuning in, keep learning, and we hope you stay in the loop.